Hi, everybody. So I am here at the Rossville Public Library with someone who is, you're not actually a librarian. Like, in my head, you're a librarian. This is my friend Sarah, and she works here at the Rossville Library, which is a branch of the Cherokee Regional Library System. And so that was, I guess maybe we can start there. So you work at a library, and you check my books out. You check and you help me find stuff here.
I'm not a librarian. No, I am a youth education coordinator at the library. The librarian positions are the director and the assistant director of the Cherokee region. They have the actual library degrees.
Okay.
They have the masters in
MLIS, Library Information Services, often.
Yes. But to work at the library and to be behind the desk and to look like a librarian.
We have the glasses.
Yes. You just need a 4-year degree.
So you could have like a 4-year degree in like pre-med or something.
Mm-hmm. So my major is sociology.
Okay.
My background is actually social work.
Yeah.
But I love reading and I love kids. And so I work at the library.
It's a great place to be.
It is.
So I wanted to get together. Thank you so much for doing a video with me. I wanted to talk about some of the social and political climate that is surrounding curriculum, libraries, school libraries, and especially as an English teacher, the English classroom, that we're seeing, especially across the nation, but especially in our neck of the woods, which is Northwest Georgia. And just some of the underlying issues and sort of help people understand what's going on from our side of the desk, if that makes sense. So some of the concerns from parents and the public seem to be that there's this growing push to have books that aren't appropriate. They'll talk about that we're promoting a certain paradigm, we're brainwashing kids that they go away to college and they're flooded with this programming, this propaganda, and really in terms of thinking about how we decide not just what's appropriate for students, and kids, although I do want to talk about that a little bit, but also what's appropriate for our communities, what our collections need, and how we decide that.
Right.
So, how do we make those decisions?
Okay. Well, the first thing I should probably say is I've only had this job for less than 2 years. So I'm by no means an expert, and I will only be answering from my experience. So I just want to make sure. So
all opinions here are ours.
Right.
Like whoever's talking, like if I say something, that ain't necessarily her opinion, and vice versa.
Right.
And it's not like official. None of this is official.
So the difference between a school library and a public library is that the public library, we really just think of ourselves more as making books available to people. We're not like teachers where we're assigning required reading or, we do have to represent, anybody should be able to come in and find a book that they're interested in on any topic. We're not allowed to censor, we don't want to have this because somebody might not like it, right? So for instance, if a patron comes in with a book and they're like, I really didn't like what was in that book, we just say, well, okay, I'm sorry.
Thanks for letting us know.
Thanks for letting us know that wasn't your favorite book. We have books for everybody, right? So that's kind of how that works as opposed to school, where I guess maybe you have certain required things that, you're building into a curriculum or something like that.
And that's also shows the difference between like the school library and like a classroom library and the actual curriculum. Right. Because those are sort of, speaking from an English teacher's perspective, those are also different things. Right. So the school library, like you said, is different because, like here at the public library, kids can come in, but they still got to get here.
Right.
Whereas at school, like, if nothing else, like if they don't have somebody who can drive them and they don't live close enough that they can walk, we will come and the school bus comes near your house and will take you to the school because you're supposed to be there.
Right.
So they are like required to be on premises.
Right.
So there's
whereas coming to a library is voluntary.
Right.
Nobody's forcing
opt
you to
in
come.
versus opt out.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's also some of the same types of things versus, what's in the school library versus what's in the classroom that the students are required to be in. For the most part, at the high school level, students aren't required to be in the library. There are sometimes, especially with the English classes, that we take the class to the library to teach them about here's where stuff is and here's what we have and here's how you find things. And if you don't know, ask.
Right.
But they're not required to be there every day like they are with their classes.
Right.
At the elementary school levels, quite often they'll have library as like one of their specials.
Yeah.
And the librarian will actually have lessons that have to do with using the library and finding information and critical thinking and things like that. So there are those books that are in the classroom that they have access to every day. So those are kind of at a higher level of scrutiny. And then of course, ones that we say, you have to read this. This is for a grade. There will be, test questions, or you will have to do writing about this, or do a presentation or something like that. Obviously, those are the ones that receive the most scrutiny.
Because you're making that part of something they have to do and they can't opt out of. So basically, like when a parent comes in and talks to me about, I'm the youth education coordinator, so I deal with anybody under the age of 18. So I get a lot of parents asking me, what's a good thing for my child to read? What should they read?
Yeah.
And so after asking them what they're interested in, I will make suggestions and I try to get their level of like what they're interested in and what they like and those kinds of things. But then I'm also very careful to tell the parents, I've not read everything in here. I don't know everything in here. You're still responsible for what your child
you're
takes
the parent,
home and reads.
This is
yes. So we have everything available, and we, within reason, we have everything available, and we'll give you suggestions. But like, don't take my suggestion as
gospel.
Right. Exactly. I haven't read or I haven't vetted everything. I don't know what your what your levels are of what you want your kids to read versus what mine would be. And so it's still your responsibility to look at what they're checking out. And that's kind of my overall disclaimer, when I'm making suggestions.
Do you know what our library policy is on kids having library cards of their own and checking out their own materials?
So anytime a child gets a library card, their guardian or parent has to sign for it. And it's linked to their parent's account until they're 18. So the idea there is that the parent is responsible not only mostly for the fines that go with it, to bring your books back to the library, but also just saying you're responsible, for what's going on with this card.
Right.
Yeah. So that's basically how that works.
Can the parent then see, like, if the child checks out, books with the card, like they ride their bike and they come to the library and they check out books. The parent can log in and see what books have been checked out
if they've set up the login. If the parent has signed up for the card, then they have the login information and they can do that. Yeah.
If they know how to click the buttons on the computer, or if you don't know, ask.
We can help you do that if you're wondering what your child's reading. But yeah, you can on your app have multiple profiles and see what kids have checked out and see what they're reading and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So that also means kids, if you are curious about something and you don't want mom and dad finding out, or grandma, grandpa, whoever, you don't want whoever has signed for this library card to find out about it, and you're under 18, realize that they can, that's the way that works. On the other hand, if a kid rides their bike to the library and pulls a book off the shelf and sits down here at the library, it's not on the card. So there's that.
It's a public space.
It's a public space, but at the same time, kids who are curious about things that they don't want somebody else finding out about could do the same thing at a bookstore.
Yes.
Don't walk out of there with the book, kiddo, because
it's still stealing even if you take our book.
you have to pay for it. If you take it from the bookstore, and you're supposed to check it out if you take it out of the library.
Right.
But reading in that space isn't tracked.
Nope.
Okay.
Yep.
I want to go back to something else you said. You said within reason.
Oh, I just mean physically. I can't have every book out.
Yes,
that's what I meant.
Oh.
We are part of the Pine system, though, so that means you do have access to 10 million books throughout the state. But physically, that's what I meant within reason. I can't have a literal copy of every book ever on my shelf because I just don't have room.
No, it's so hard. Actually, that brings up something that is not exactly related to this that, sort of as we get towards the end of this, I want to get to. So don't let me forget. I want to talk about the process of curating and weeding. Oh, boy. It's so hard. It's so hard, you guys. Oh, my goodness.
I will admit, I am a minimalist personally in my personal life. So I do get rid of things pretty easily. So we'll talk about that.
Okay. So just in terms of personally, professionally, not like officially again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How do we decide, because we are limited not just in space but also
in money.
In terms of money.
Exactly.
What and also in terms of time.
Mm-hmm.
You can't it's something that I have to deal with as a teacher. I've written about this. In fact, I think it was one of my first blog posts. Was about, teachers saying, well, I wanted to do thus and such in class, but I didn't have time to.
Yeah, exactly.
And you probably did.
Right.
But you chose to do something else at that time.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to prioritize.
Exactly. Yeah. And so how do we determine what our collection needs? And I think this will actually make a segue because, what our collection no longer needs. We'll segue that way.
Sure. So this is not a science, even though your degree is in library science.
Library science. They call it that.
Right. So really, my job as the person who purchases the books for my library is to get what I think people are going to read and what's going to circulate. So every time a book gets checked out and brought back in, that's called a circulation. Mm-hmm. And so part of when you're working in public with money is how you gauge how your money is working is how many times does something circulate. That makes it more worthwhile. So I'm usually trying to think about when I'm purchasing a book, is this going to, and circulation just means interest. People want to read this, which is usually what's going to be the newer things that come out, especially with younger age stuff. They want the new, and you're doing high schoolers, but if you remember ever reading like Llama Llama Red Pajama or Pete the Cat, they want the newest one of that.
Kevin the Unicorn. I loved Kevin the Unicorn. Right. So sweet.
So we're usually, like, my first thing is usually what's the most popular thing right now? What's the trend? A lot of times what's the trendy thing right now? Unicorns are very in. And so any book I get on a unicorn is going to have a high circulation rate. So you're mostly looking at that because you need to see that your dollars are being used
effectively.
Yes. And the way I think of it is I'm not curating a personal library. I'm curating a library for anybody to be able to come in and hopefully find something that they're interested in.
Right. So you want the stuff that is on trend because that's going to get a lot of circulation. But at the same time, you want variety too.
Yes. So, I want variety. Yeah. I want what's on trend. I want, variety. It's really interesting, the whole trend now, like in adult books, anytime something gets big on TikTok, we've got to go in and purchase, like all of a sudden we'll have people coming in. It's not necessarily a new book. It might be a book that's 8 or 9 or 10 years old. But because it's trending on TikTok, people want it. And so we got to go get it. So, that's where it's more of an art than a science because you can't always predict that.
Right. Yeah. Because when something goes viral, it happens really quickly.
Really quickly, exactly. So it goes viral, and then we're like, oh, we got to. So for instance, if y'all have seen the new series, The Summer I Turned Pretty, I don't know if a lot of your kids. Yes. So that's really trending with young adults right now. I didn't even know they were making a show out of it until all of a sudden in one day I had like 3 different teenagers come in and ask for that book, and I didn't have it because it's an old book. And so there are some formulas for how you go through and get rid of older books. And so I had to go and purchase them, but of course they were all sold out.
Because all the other libraries
wanted them too. So those kinds of things, you're kind of trying to balance, what do we think is coming? What has been, how do we spend the money, that kind of thing.
How much do you keep in reserve for like something like this happening and things like that?
Exactly. So that's a lot. But that's how I think about it. I'm not, because a lot of times people will come in and say, oh, you don't have this favorite classic book from, and I'll say, well, if it doesn't circulate and people don't want to read it now, then I have to make sure that I've got things on shelves that people want to read. Yeah. So it's not my personal collection or your personal collection. It's so a public collection.
Yeah. And but on the other hand, there are things you can do to help.
Yes. We always like help.
Displays. They're just if you're like, man, this is a great book and nobody's checking it out. I mean, it might not have gone viral. It might not be trending on TikTok, but maybe maybe if there was an influencer in Rossville who read this book, maybe it would.
Right.
So, some book displays, and I know you guys have great activities here, such as
collage making.
Our collage making. Yep. And I saw up in the children's area you had the silk painting. So lots of things, and those can be a great opportunity to talk about some of the things that have just come in or things like that.
Yep. We have I know y'all are teenagers or whatever, but we do Lego Club, and all ages come to Lego Club. So we do that, and then I'll pull in books that have to do with whatever theme we're doing for Legos, or whatever. And then, I just choose, sometimes I do like a middle school book club, and we'll try to like look at something that's interesting to read or that kids have told me they want to read, and we'll look at it together. So there are different ways of encouraging, like, hey, this might be a good book that you want to read, or encouraging it to circulate, because, we'll bring it back out.
Yeah. And that brings up one of the things that the School Library Journal survey talked about was books that are more controversial being removed without being checked out. And that made me think when I lived up in Pennsylvania, they had DVDs that circulated, and I think you guys, I don't know if you guys do this as well with the DVDs that are out there. Okay, no, they didn't do this. They had double clips.
Oh, okay.
So they would have like a DVD case out there with a photocopy of the jacket, just the paper photocopy in the slipcover. And so you could browse through the DVDs, but they're all empty cases. And they had just the black and white photocopy of the cover there, and then you'd bring that up there, and they would put that back in the vault where they took out the DVD and gave it to you in the original case. And so they could, they would be able to see which DVDs had been checked out because the black and white copy would be in there. Right. And then, of course, it would be off the shelf as well. Yeah. So that's a way. Now, the thing is with the lock, though.
You could still walk out with it.
And, I guess if you've got, like, a hacksaw or something, I don't know.
I guess you could try to, I don't know.
I've never tried to get through one of those locks. I don't know if you could just, with
They're magnetic. So I don't know. I've never tried to break into one. Maybe. Well,
if you have tips on those, I know. I always ask for comments, but if you know how to break one of those open, you can. If you put a comment, I will tell you it's not going to get approved. Okay, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to tell you how to rip off the library. It's not happening. No. Support your library. Don't steal from them.
Yes.
Goodness gracious.
Yes. But we are also actually the method that you're talking about. We are talking about. This is not related to books, but talking about circulating things that people want. We are actually getting like things like video games and Switch games that we can add to our collection, but we're not going to put those out. You would get a picture and bring it, and then we would check it out to you. So that because we know the Switch games are really little and there's not a but again, that's not book related necessarily, but it's one of the ways the library's kind of changed into saying, what do people need? Obviously, we want them to read, and we want you guys to read, but one of the ways we get them to come into the library and start to read is if you're coming in for a Switch game, you might notice a book that you're like,
Yes.
oh, that looks really
Oh,
interesting.
that's
Maybe I'll
interesting.
pick that up too.
And then also, if you've got like the Switch games and there's a game that's either just about to come out or that has just come out, and you know people are going to be coming in here, you might make a display of books that have a similar tone or similar theme, or it involves some of those characters.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's great.
That.
And so, but what I was thinking was VHS clamshells.
Yes.
But
We don't have those.
but no, not the VHS, but the Switch games, because they're so small, they're harder to browse. But using, making a larger copy of the cover of the game, putting that on the outside of the clamshell, so you can look at the spines of them, spine out the way that
She's a smart lady.
Thank you.
Y'all should listen to her.
Yes, listen to me. Give your libraries money. I'm telling you. Seriously, libraries are like the best thing ever. And of course, we also do have the wonderful interlibrary loan program, which I've got, let's see, right now I've got these two that are right here. This one that I'm working on, In Order to Live, it's really good. And then this one I'm super excited, this one I'll show here, I'm super excited about. I just got it today. Because I've been looking for memoirs that are for people from other countries that don't carry the narrative of my life was terrible until I left my third world country and came to America, and now it's better. And I'm just like, people find joy in their life all over the world, and being able to find joy somewhere that's not like here is, being able to find joy in, situations that are different. You don't have to have a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house with a white picket fence in order to have a good life.
Yes. Actually, funny personal note on that. I actually grew up in West Africa, and some of the most joyful people I know are my friends in West Africa. And it was an amazing way to grow up, because the kids were happy with a toy they made out of sticks and leaves, and they thought it was amazing.
Right.
So yeah, and they weren't moving to America or anything like that, but their lives were really joyful. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's Yeonmi Park talks about some of this in this book about not the context of both in terms of how those experiences shape you. Both in terms of being able to find joy in where you have, but also not sort of normalizing both the joy and the suffering.
Right.
And not being able to see something else as a possibility. And I think that goes the other way as well, that, we normalize what is normal for us. And we don't necessarily think about it's when you're not exposed to other possibilities. It's difficult to see anything else as possible. You can be a really creative and imaginative person, but without something to get you started thinking outside the box, it can just doing it on your own is almost impossible. So, and books provide one way of doing that, which is one of the reasons I love them so.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
absolutely.
Yeah, I do love movies, and I love the story in video games. I suck at working controllers. I'm
not a video
absolutely I'm absolutely terrible at it, and so it's actually very stressful for me. So I don't play video games much, but I like the stories, and that sense of being involved in the stories is really, really, really powerful.
Yeah.
I think that's really significant as a new medium, and we're looking more some psychological research is looking at the way that gaming as a new media form is really starting to influence, education, work, politics, the way that we interact, in other ways as well. So it's really cool. So I do want to, so you talked a little bit about there are procedures in place for how we say goodbye.
There are. So again, this is kind of varies from library to library. Library worker. I don't want to call myself a librarian. But what we do is we basically, from our database, we make a list of it's a numbers game most of the time, honestly. So we make a list and say in the last 10 years, any book that is circulated less than 5 times, say, or 10 times. Let's say it's circulated, let's be generous and say once a year. And any book that's less than that is our initial pass, and we pull it out. And then we look and we say, like, so for instance, the Twilight series, even if that hasn't circulated well in the last 5 years, we're probably going to keep it because it was such a cultural phenomenon. And everybody, every generation kind of revisits it. So we're not going to get rid of Twilight. But if you had, like, when it first came out, you probably had multiple copies. Oh, yes. We had multiple copies. So I would, if I had 2 or 3 copies, I'll probably take out. It's not that popular now. So I'd probably make sure I just have 1 copy of each because I do have limited shelf space. So it's really just a numbers game, honestly, which is why we're always counting circulations. Right. So we know a book is doing, popular, people like it because the amount of times it circulates. So that's what we're looking at, basically. Yeah.
So does it get linked to cards?
No, we do not keep any records of what people check out once it's all been checked back in. Okay. So there's no way to tell what even you checked out a week ago.
So if there's a book you love, and you want to make sure that it stays at the library, you just go and check it out and check it back in.
Or read it, or ask a friend to go check it out, or something like that.
You can't always trust your friends. Sometimes they say they're going to do something for you, and then they don't.
Or they read the book and then they don't like it. Which is a whole other thing.
And then you just can't be friends anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I guess you can forgive them for being wrong. I mean, not everybody's as awesome as we are.
Yeah. So it's basically a numbers game, and really, honestly, it keeps the emotional part out of it. So like there might be a book that I really, really love, but if it's not circulating, and that means that the whole wider community is not really enjoying it, then it's time to let it go. And even though it might have been my favorite book growing up,
And if it was, chances are you probably have your own copy.
That's true. That's true. That's true.
So what happens to a book when the library decides it's time to say goodbye?
Yeah. So there's a couple of different things that happen. One of our main book distributors has a buyback program. Okay. So we send them a book of the list that we've pulled, and they tell us if they will buy it back from us, and then we box them up. And actually, if you saw Kimberly working today, she had piles of boxes, and we send them back to them, and then we get some money back for them. So it's kind of like it's kind of like our own personal McKay's.
So McKay's is a local or regional, really, used bookstore that has an amazing selection.
Yeah, and you can bring your books there, and then you get trade-in value, and you can buy other books or videos or DVDs or whatever.
Yeah, they have
so that's
vinyl records too. Great vinyl selection.
Yeah, so that's one way we do it. Another way we do it is so McKay's will not take library books. Right. So we will just take off the barcodes, delete it from our collection, and put it out for on our book sale. And so we sell it for $1.50, and we get something back out of it. And hopefully, if it was one of your favorites, but it's not going to be in our collection anymore, then you enjoy reading it, or you for $1 read it and pass it on to someone else, and it gets circulated like that. So those are the main ways that we get say goodbye.
Okay, so what happens if it goes on the cart for the book sale and nobody decides that they want to give it a forever home?
Then we will donate it to like a thrift store that will sell that their money, they are a nonprofit or something, or they go in the recycling. Okay. Because it's paper.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes really, really old books, that's what happens. Or sometimes the paperbacks, the
like spines crack and the pages are falling
out. And there's just not really a whole lot more that you can do. Sometimes I will do a craft out of them, try to repurpose them, but sometimes end up in
they make this isn't a bulletin board, but they make bulletin board backgrounds, I've used it for that, but
wreaths, you can do the little where you fold, and then when you open it, it like spells your name. Or I don't have the patience to do that, but I've seen people do that. It looks really cool. So somebody does that, let me know. But sometime the last stop is recycling, where they get another life as something else.
That's true. I haven't thought about it that way.
There we go. Let's reframe it that way.
Yes. Oh, I mean, it's like it's like cadaver donation. It's like, you are gone, but you get to still have an adventure.
There you go.
You
get to benefit the public good.
Benefit humanity. There is someone who is looking for, a cure to cancer or becoming a surgeon, and they need, goodness knows, they need practice. Please practice if you're going to be a surgeon. So
I feel like we've gone down like a hole.
I did a video. One of the books that I book talked was Mary Roach's Stiff.
Okay, well,
so
there you go.
It ties in.
It all ties in.
It's one of my, it definitely.
We can make it work.
Interesting book, yeah. I think that covers just about everything.
Good.
Thank you so much, Sarah Rapier. It is Rapier.
Rapier, Sarah, like the sword.
There you go.
Very, very fancy.
Very fancy. Thank you so much for joining
You're
me.
welcome.
And
thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Don't forget, it's not bad to be patronizing when you're patronizing the library.
That was a good tagline.
I'm telling you. So,
you have a smart teacher. You should listen to her.
I haven't made a shirt yet, but it's, yes, I'm patronizing the library down in small print.
So, we're getting Halloween shirts made that have a ghost, and they say books.
I love it. Are you going to be selling them?
No.
Oh!
We only have them for us. I know. I wish we could, but no.
Okay. Well, maybe for next year's library sale.
There we go.
If there's leftovers. All right. Thanks everybody for watching. I appreciate it, and thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Bye, guys.